Did you know that the biblical giants survived the flood? This unbelievable truth is about to be revealed. Dive into the hidden history of the Nephilim and discover how they escaped destruction. Get ready to be amazed by this fascinating revelation. Before the flood, the Nephilim are mentioned in Genesis 6 verses 1 to 4, where their origin and impact on earth are described. These passages provide a glimpse of a world radically different from ours, populated by extraordinary beings whose existence challenged the norms of divine creation. The text of Genesis 6 verse 4 states, "In those days there were giants on the earth, and also afterward, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown." This passage not only introduces the Nephilim but also suggests that their presence was significant enough to be highlighted in the biblical narrative. These sons of God are often interpreted as fallen angels who descended to earth and took human wives. The union of these celestial entities with mortal women resulted in the birth of the Nephilim, beings who possessed a mix of human and divine characteristics. Their gigantic stature and superhuman abilities made them figures of great renown and, apparently, great influence in pre-flood society. The presence of the Nephilim contributed to the increase of wickedness and corruption on earth. Genesis 6 verses 5 to 6 describes how God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. This led God to regret having created humanity and to decide to bring a flood to purify the world. Other references to giants, although not specifically mentioning the Nephilim, are found in various ancient and apocryphal texts. The Book of Enoch, for example, provides a detailed description of the actions of the fallen angels and the giants. Enoch recounts how the angels taught humans the art of war, magic, and other forbidden knowledge, further contributing to the moral decay of humanity. The Nephilim, with their strength and abilities, would have played a significant role in spreading corruption and violence. Their influence helped create a society that was in deep rebellion against divine precepts. This total rebellion against God's order is what precipitated the divine decision to send the flood as an act of judgment and renewal. With the introduction and references to the Nephilim before the flood, we begin to understand the magnitude of their presence and why God considered it necessary to purify the earth. Now that we have established the pre-flood context, let's explore the narrative of Noah's flood and how it relates to the giants. Stay with us to uncover more about this fascinating biblical story. The narrative of Noah's flood is one of the most well-known and significant stories in the Bible. Described in Genesis 6:9-9:17, this story narrates how God decided to purify the world of its corruption and wickedness, saving only Noah, his family, and a pair of each animal species. According to the Bible, God saw that the earth was full of violence and corruption due to human wickedness and the influence of the Nephilim. In Genesis 6 verses 11 to 12, we read, "The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth." God then decided to destroy all flesh, except Noah and his family, as Noah was a just and upright man in his generations. God instructed Noah to build an ark, detailing the exact specifications for its construction. The ark was to house Noah, his family, and a pair of each animal species to repopulate the earth after the flood. Noah obeyed all of God's instructions and built the ark. When the ark was ready, God commanded Noah and his family to enter the ark, along with the animals. Then, God caused it to rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. The flood covered the entire surface of the earth, submerging mountains and destroying all living creatures not on the ark. The magnitude of the flood is described in Genesis 7 verses 17 to 24, where the waters prevailed on the earth for 150 days. All life on the surface of the earth perished, except Noah and those with him in the ark. After the flood, the waters began to recede, and the ark finally rested on the mountains of Ararat. Noah, his family, and the animals remained in the ark until the land was dry enough for them to exit. God then made a covenant with Noah, promising never to destroy all life with a flood again and placing the rainbow as a sign of this covenant. This narrative clearly establishes that the flood was a cataclysmic event intended to purify the earth of all corruption and wickedness, including the presence of the Nephilim. However, the mention of giants after the flood raises questions about how some Nephilim could have survived this total devastation. Various theories have been proposed to explain how these colossal beings could have survived an event meant to purify the earth of all corruption. Let's explore some of these theories and the evidence supporting them. One of the most discussed theories is the hypothesis that the Nephilim lineage was preserved through the wives of Noah's sons. This theory suggests that while Noah and his sons were righteous in God's eyes, the wives of Noah's sons could have carried Nephilim genes. Thus, after the flood, these genes could have resurfaced in subsequent generations. This viewpoint is supported by biblical references mentioning the presence of giants in post-flood generations, such as the Anakites and the Rephaim. Another theory is that some Nephilim managed to find refuge in places that protected them from the floodwaters. These refuges could have been underground caves or mystical hidden regions, preserving the giants from the cataclysm. Apocryphal texts and esoteric writings sometimes mention subterranean realms or hidden dimensions where powerful beings could survive global disasters. Some scholars propose that after the flood, a second intervention of the sons of God, the fallen angels, occurred, resulting in a new generation of Nephilim. This theory is supported by the interpretation that the fallen angels continued to interact with humanity even after the flood, perpetuating the giant lineage. There is also a more spiritual perspective, suggesting that the spirits of the Nephilim survived the flood and found new human bodies to inhabit. This theory is based on the belief that the Nephilim, as hybrids of angels and humans, possessed souls or spirits that could transfer to new bodies, continuing their existence on Earth. Some scholars adopt a symbolic approach, suggesting that mentions of giants after the flood are metaphors for powerful peoples or warriors of great moral and military stature. This interpretation views the Nephilim not as literal beings, but as symbols of power and threat that continued to influence the historical and cultural narrative of the Israelite tribes. Each of these theories offers a unique perspective on the possible survival of the Nephilim after the flood. While some are based on literal and genetic interpretations, others explore the possibility of supernatural interventions or cultural symbolism. Now that we have explored the main theories about the survival of the Nephilim, let's delve deeper into the hypothesis of the preserved genetic lineage and how it could explain the presence of giants in post-flood generations. The preserved genetic lineage hypothesis is one of the most compelling explanations for the presence of giants after the flood. This theory suggests that the Nephilim lineage was preserved through the wives of Noah's sons, who could have carried Nephilim genes. Let's explore how this hypothesis develops and the evidence supporting it. The biblical narrative states that Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and the wives of his sons were the only humans to survive the flood. If we consider that Noah and his sons were righteous and did not possess Nephilim genes, the possibility that the wives of Shem, Ham, and Japheth carried these genes becomes plausible. By surviving the flood, these women could have transmitted the Nephilim genes to their descendants. The Bible mentions the presence of giants on several occasions after the flood, supporting the preserved genetic lineage hypothesis. In Numbers 13:33, the spies sent by Moses report seeing giants in the Promised Land, describing them as descendants of the Nephilim. We saw the Nephilim there. The descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. Furthermore, the Rephaim, another group of giants, are mentioned several times in the Old Testament. Deuteronomy 2 verse 11 and 3:11 speak of the Rephaim as giants who inhabited the land of Moab and Bashan. The famous king Og of Bashan, described as the last of the Rephaim, had a bed of iron measuring approximately 13 feet in length, indicating his colossal stature. Modern genetics offers an interesting perspective on how recessive traits can be transmitted through generations. Even if the Nephilim genes were recessive, They could persist in human populations and occasionally manifest in descendants who inherited these genes from both parents. This could explain the sporadic presence of giants in later times. Apocryphal texts and ancient traditions also provide support for the idea that the Nephilim genes were preserved. The Book of Enoch, for example, describes the fallen angels and their descendants in detail, suggesting that these beings continued to influence humanity in various ways. These sources, although not canonical, offer a broader view of ancient beliefs about the persistence of the Nephilim. While the preserved genetic lineage hypothesis offers a logical explanation, it also raises critical questions. For example, why would God allow the Nephilim lineage to survive the flood, given that the purpose of the flood was to purify the earth? Some theologians suggest that this could be part of human free will and the imperfect nature of post-fall creation. This hypothesis, although not conclusive, offers a fascinating insight into how the presence of giants might have continued after the flood. The possibility that the Nephilim genes were preserved through generations provides a bridge between the pre-flood accounts and the references to giants in later scriptures. Another fascinating theory that seeks to explain the survival of the Nephilim after the flood is that of subterranean or mystical refuges. This hypothesis suggests that some of the giants managed to find refuge in hidden places, protected from the devastating waters of the flood. Let's explore how this theory develops and the evidence supporting it. The idea that the Nephilim could have found refuge in underground caves is not entirely implausible. The Bible and other ancient traditions mention the existence of vast networks of tunnels and caves that extend beneath the surface of the earth. These places could have offered protection from the floodwaters. The giants, with their superhuman strength, could have dug or found caves deep enough to protect them from the cataclysm. There are various legends and myths in cultures around the world that speak of powerful beings living in subterranean realms, suggesting that this idea was present in different traditions. In addition to underground caves, some esoteric and apocryphal texts speak of mystical realms or hidden dimensions where extraordinary beings could dwell. The Book of Enoch, for example, describes places where the fallen angels and their descendants were imprisoned. These places, described as abysses or hidden regions, could have served as refuge for some Nephilim during the flood. The belief in parallel dimensions or invisible realms is common in many cultures and religions. These places are seen as spheres of existence beyond common human perception, where powerful beings can live and operate. The survival of the Nephilim in such mystical realms would be an explanation that transcends the material understanding of the world. Although there is no direct archaeological evidence proving the existence of subterranean refuges for the Nephilim, there are many mythological accounts mentioning giant beings living underground. For example, in Norse and Celtic mythologies, there are stories of giants and other powerful beings inhabiting subterranean worlds or hidden caves. These myths may be reflections of ancient cultural memories, preserved through generations, suggesting the possibility of extraordinary beings finding shelter beneath the Earth's surface. The stories of Atlantis and other lost civilizations also fuel the imagination about hidden places where powerful beings could have survived global catastrophes. Apocryphal texts, such as the Book of Enoch and other esoteric writings, frequently mention hidden places where powerful beings are confined. These narratives offer a broader view of ancient cosmology, where the physical world is interconnected with spiritual and mystical realms. The Nephilim, as hybrid beings, could have accessed these realms and survived the flood. While the theory of subterranean or mystical refuges is fascinating, it also faces critical challenges. The lack of concrete archaeological evidence and the speculative nature of esoteric and mythological sources make this theory difficult to prove. However, it offers an intriguing perspective on how the Nephilim could have avoided total destruction during the flood. This theory leads us to consider the possibility that the ancient world was much more complex and interconnected than we can imagine, with dimensions and realms beyond our current understanding. The spiritual survival and reincarnation hypothesis offers a more esoteric approach to explaining the presence of the Nephilim after the flood. This theory suggests that the spirits of the Nephilim, being partially angelic, survived the flood and found new human bodies to inhabit. Let's explore the foundations of this hypothesis and the evidence supporting it. The Nephilim, being descendants of fallen angels and humans, possessed a hybrid nature that included unique spiritual characteristics. This spiritual nature could have allowed their spirits to survive the physical destruction caused by the flood. Apocryphal texts, such as the Book of Enoch, suggest that the spirits of the Nephilim became wandering spiritual entities after their physical deaths, continuing to influence the world. Reincarnation is the belief that souls can be reborn into new bodies after death. Although this idea is not widely supported by canonical Judeo-Christian traditions, it is present in many other religions and spiritual philosophies. The hypothesis suggests that the spirits of the Nephilim could have reincarnated into new human bodies after the flood, perpetuating their lineage and influence. The Book of Enoch and other apocryphal texts provide insights into the nature of the Nephilim and their spiritual capacities. These texts describe how the spirits of the giants continued to roam the earth, tormenting humanity and seeking new bodies to inhabit. This view aligns with the idea that the Nephilim could reincarnate and continue their presence on earth. The presence of giants in post-flood scriptures, such as the Anakites and Rephaim, can be seen as evidence that the spirits of the Nephilim found new bodies to inhabit. These giants exhibited characteristics and abilities similar to the pre-flood Nephilim, suggesting a spiritual continuity. Goliath is undoubtedly the most famous giant in the Bible, primarily known for his confrontation with the young David. Described in 1 Samuel 17, Goliath was a Philistine warrior nearly 3 meters tall, armed with a spear whose iron head weighed about 600 shekels. He challenged the Israelite army, provoking fear and hesitation among the Israelite soldiers. David's victory over Goliath, using only a sling and a stone, not only demonstrated David's courage and faith in God, but also symbolized the defeat of evil and seemingly invincible forces. Goliath's story highlights that despite the stature and physical power of giants, faith and divine protection prevail. The Anakites are mentioned several times in the Old Testament as a race of giants who inhabited the Promised Land. In Numbers 13:33, the spies sent by Moses report seeing the descendants of Anak, describing them as giants before whom they felt like grasshoppers. These accounts of the Anakites perpetuate the idea that the presence of giants continued even after the flood. The Bible mentions that the Anakites were eventually defeated by Joshua and the Israelites during the conquest of Canaan, but their mention underscores the persistence of giant lineages among the peoples of the region. Og, king of Bashan, is another significant giant mentioned in the Bible. Deuteronomy 3 verse 11 describes Og as the last of the Rephaim, a race of giants, and mentions his iron bed, which measured about 13 feet long. The Bible recounts Og's defeat at the hands of the Israelites, led by Moses, during the conquest of the lands east of the Jordan. The existence of Og and the description of his bed reinforce the idea that the Rephaim, like the Anakites, were a race of giants that continued to exist after the flood. Og's defeat symbolizes the overcoming of evil forces and the conquest of the territory promised by God to the people of Israel. The presence of the Nephilim and giants after the flood is a fascinating mystery that continues to intrigue scholars and believers. From Goliath to the Anakites and Rephaim, these colossal figures remind us of the complexities and depths of the biblical narrative. Each story highlights the struggle between good and evil and the victory of faith over seemingly invincible forces. This reminds us of the perfection of God's plans, where everything has its purpose and nothing is by chance. With this story, we can reflect on our lives and know that God is with us at all times and that nothing happens without His permission. We must remain firm in faith, without fear of tomorrow, doing our part because He is the God of the impossible. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my strength. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for His name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for You are with me. Your rod and Your staff, they comfort me. If you enjoyed this video and want to continue exploring biblical mysteries and intriguing stories, don't forget to subscribe to our channel.